So we can't trust management, okay? Can we trust the government? That's the problem. We can't, because they totally support what management has done. They are totally reinforcing and want management to screw us even more. Can we trust the union? The problem is, over the last 30 years, if we just confine it to that period of time, we can say that the union, the UAW, has never found a concession it couldn't advocate that we lived with. I mean, I was in a plant where we fought against two-tier. And we actually won the majority of the people in our plant to oppose two-tier, to understand that the basic message of solidarity, which is what the union is supposed to be about, the solidarity among generations, the solidarity among races, the solidarity among genders, is totally gone if it's a tiered wage. And in our plant, it's two-tier. But in another American axle plant, they have four-tier at this point. Four-tier. And then they're used to whipsaw against us because we're only two-tier. The corporation, the head of the corporation said, I'll never bring new work to Detroit because you're not willing to be as competitive as Three Rivers is. So, so we can't really trust the union. So this is the problem that workers face, and that I went through an 87-day strike last year. It was a strike which we lost big. I don't think it was a strike we had to lose, but there was no strategy to that strike. So in the end, we were forced to give up. So what does that mean in terms of thinking about how we could take possession and reform the industry? Because I agree very much that we need to get rid of the profit system and to develop. I would also say that in the UAW has always supported lower admission standards, for example. In 2007, when we were preparing for our contract at General Motors and at Ford, what did the union call us out for? To defend a good contract? No, we were never mobilized to do that, but we were called out to go out on a demonstration, to have demonstrations for lower admission standards. So, so here's the situation. So what we've started doing, a very small group of rank and filers, said, okay, we've got to change things. And we have to start looking at a big picture. Even though we're pretty weak as a rank and file movement, we have to start talking about green jobs. We have to start talking about not only the electric car and green cars, we also have to start talking about the reorganization of our society on the basis of mass transit, of trolleys and light trains and buses. We have to, particularly because we're in the Midwest, you know, we have a very long coastline where we should be building wind turbines and water turbines. So, for example, an axle plant like I worked at is really a very good plant to reorganize for the building of wind turbines. So we can't just even confine ourselves to the transportation industry as we think about it. We organized a demonstration at the beginning of January at the auto show. The auto show, they have all the big day where all the press comes from all over the world. So we organized a demonstration, and we were raising some of these ideas, and I was really so happy because, you know, a lot of auto workers, you know, buy America, get rid of the illegal immigrants, it's the globalization is the problem. And the way they speak about globalization, it's sort of like, well, we're powerless to do anything because the market has just done this, you know, there's nothing we can do. So by presenting these demands around green jobs and looking at a revitalized transportation and energy industry, you know, I was still a little afraid, okay, we're going to have all these people coming, you know, they've been invited, but, you know, they're going to come bring their own signs. What are the signs going to say? What are the chants going to be like? And I was so happy. There was a group of guys, and they were shouting, solar panel, not door panels. And obviously they worked making door panels, you know. And the other demand that we raised was single-payer health care. Because what they talk about is auto workers make $73 an hour. Well, of course, never, you know, $26 an hour, including cost of living. But they throw in all of the workers who once worked there who are still on pensions or health care. And of course, because the industry is now much smaller than it was then, there are something like almost 400,000 GM retirees and their spouses who are still collecting on health care benefits. They're not dying fast enough, right? So that's piled on to what the worker is making today. We could take that off. We could get rid of those health care costs by having a single-payer plan. The problem is, of course, that even though in this particular case you might even say, Jay, this is one of the few win-win situations there is, you know, because really the companies, this is a huge price. GM is very fond of saying, we pay more for health care every year than we pay for steel. But even though GM said to the UAW that they would be interested in fighting for single payer, of course it's not true, because if we actually won single payer in this country, it would be such a step forward, because then we wouldn't have to always be looking for jobs on the basis of the health care, right? We'd be so much freer. So the capitalist class understands that, and they are not going to help us with that one. So what I'm saying is that what we're trying to do with our little rank and file group is to develop a solidaristic, forward-looking culture, which is very different from the culture that exists inside the UAW, which is just a continuation of kind of the politics of resentment that exists in America. And where workers are encouraged to have a consumerist attitude. I pay my dues money every month. What am I getting for my dues money? But it's not that. And we have to encourage people to understand that we have to take responsibility for ourselves and for our lives and for our futures, because there is no one who's going to do this. So I don't like to use the word nationalization, because I think of it as Simonization or something else like that. I try to talk about public trust, that we should buy up these companies on the cheap. This is a formulation that Michael Moore came up with, and I think it's good. And they should be public trusts. And who should run it? Well, along the lines that Dan suggests too. I try to say, well, because skilled workers and production workers are in the same unit, so we're used to working together. Engineers also, we know, because they come into the plant and work with us. Office workers, we really don't know, but I try to encourage, try to think about, well, they're workers too. And to see ourselves as we would fight for jobs, and we would fight to reorganize the industry so that it would be beneficial to our communities. So I think that takes the pressure off what I see as the right-wing answers that come up with all the time. I went to a rally just a few days after the rally that we had organized at the auto show in Detroit that the mayor of Warren put together. The mayor of Warren is the son of an auto worker, and he put together a Buy America campaign. And I really had to laugh because he said his definition of an American company is a company that keeps its profits in America. And he was trying to differentiate that from the transplants. But of course, it's not true. GM doesn't keep its profits in America. So by that, I guess there are no American companies. But there's always this distinction between that we have to make between what the bosses want and what we need. And that's why I think in terms of developing a strategy, we have to avoid those situations where we talk about the national interest. Well, there's really not a national interest. There's the interest of the corporate elite, and there are the interests of the majority of the people who work here. I think I don't know some of the answers to Dan's point about how would a reorganized auto industry relate to the rest of the world, to Canada and Mexico and China and so forth. But I know that if the focus is on creating jobs, you're taking the pressure off. If people feel that they have jobs and working conditions, then, hey, that's fine that other people have jobs and working conditions too.